thank you to everyone for tuning in this week. We will be having the show on Facebook Live tonight as well. I know we are working out some of the technical things that come along with doing video. Camera placement's having a little bit of an issue, but we will go live on Facebook Live here pretty soon. So if you're listening on the Spreaker app or online on the on Blog Talk Radio, thank you for joining in this evening. Kevin Kress, the co-host, will join us here shortly. But we have had a pretty interesting and wild week in the NFL. It would not be short or too unexplanatory to say that this week was a wild week. Can you guys get this taken care of? Just finish setting this up. Yeah, so I can do the show. Figure you guys could do that. But anyways, when we were trying to play with the camera and fix the camera, so the angle's set up right, and I'm trying to talk to you guys at the same time. So we'll get that figured out. Yeah, just this. Yeah, you can see the camera here. You just fix it so we can go live on Facebook too. Appreciate it. Anyways, everything from the Monday night game that was just last night, with which was a low-scoring game. I know so many people have been in the fear that, oh my gosh, every game's going to be, 100-point games. No. And that's the thing is, it takes time for things to trend in that direction. Unfortunately, teams still have to go out and perform. I don't know if that was necessarily just offenses couldn't get it done, or if it was defenses were playing well, or officiating was seemingly borderline incompetent. I don't know where to go with that. And that was just on Monday. The league looks like, overall officiating-wise, that it is sorely missing former head of officiating Dean Blandino. There's some seemingly, from what I say, again, watching it live or in hindsight, either way you want to look at it, some fairly blatant and okay, put it this way. So last night on Monday Night Football, there was a call on Wagner that hands to the opening of the face helmet, of the helmet, not a face mask, but hands to the opening of the helmet. What does that mean exactly? Is that where the eye area is, the opening of the helmet, so it's not actually the face mask? Is it the ear hole? Is it one of those new shock vents, whatever they have on the top of the helmet? Is that considered an opening of the helmet? I'm guessing that it's more so where the visor would go, if player had a visor. But nonetheless, when you look at the replay, Wagner didn't touch there. He didn't touch the visor area, the face mask. He touched the helmet, but it was nowhere near the opening. He didn't grasp the opening or put his hand in it. He didn't put his hand in the proverbial cookie jar. But yeah, he got his hand slapped. But then the very next play, he ends up having a face mask, which didn't get called. And Wagner used leverage to jump over the pile on a field goal, which is illegal. You can't use the opposing team as leverage to prop yourself up or over, or your own teammates. You cannot catapult yourself. You cannot use them for leverage, which he did. And was called. Good job for calling that, refs. But they convened and picked up the flag, and it was a no call. Okay. So they got it right, and then they backtracked. It's like when you get that test done too fast, and you go back. That thing is like, I always tell myself, there was a certain point in time I told myself, I'm not going to go back over and look at any of the answers. I'll go back and fill in ones that I just skipped. But I won't read over any of the ones I already answered. Because when you start reading over it, you start second guessing yourself, you start overthinking stuff. And that's essentially what the refs did on Monday Night Football. They got it right. Out of 3 penalties, again, it just so happened Wagner was involved with all of them. Not to say that it's anything special about him. He just so happened to be the one guy that was involved in all 3 of these penalties. He was called on the penalty that wasn't actually a penalty he committed. And then the 2 penalties he did commit, one was called and picked up, and then the other one wasn't called at all. So, I guess if players can have bad seasons, I guess refs can have bad seasons too. I guess. I don't know. I'll let the Big Ten officiating use that as an excuse this season too. But there was a lot left to be desired when it comes to penalty calling. Now, either if you like the game from a few weeks ago with the high-octane offenses in the Chiefs and the Rams, or if you like down and dirty, sloppy games like Monday night, low-scoring games, either way, the ratings show you're going to watch football, NFL football, whatever it is. And if the Dallas Cowboys are playing, people are more likely to watch. The Cowboys are now seemingly in what could be a comfortable position to win the NFC East. Essentially just playing SEC football. That's what they're doing. Not doing anything special. They have a good offensive line. They have a quality defense this year. They have a playmaker at wide receiver now. They have a mediocre player at quarterback that has a little bit of mobility. And they have an awesome running back. And all they're doing is just feeding it, play action. They're putting Dak in, giving him high percentage throws, high percentage passes. You know, the average for NFL players is around 17 yards per pass attempt. Most of Dak's passes fall under the NFL average. Now, obviously, Amari Cooper having a couple of pretty good games makes Dak look pretty good. He's still just as average and mediocre as ever. they just finally got Amari Cooper into a situation where they can continue that development, and he has found his momentum again. That being said, let me bring in my co-host. He is also the author of the PK Fraziel novel series. He is the editor for our golf section and one of the top contributors for college football. It's Mr. Kevin Crest. How are you doing tonight, Kevin?
I'm doing fine. I like the fact that you bring up the SEC style of football, and Dak Prescott is from the SEC, so that's appropriate. That's where he went to college, so he played that style of football, and the Cowboys are surprising, aren't they? They were 3-5. We were calling for the coach's job about 5 weeks ago, and they haven't lost since. So interesting course of events there in Dallas. Well,
I was saying with Jason Garrett, if he didn't get fired last year, I didn't think he was going to get fired this year. The thing is, Jason Garrett provides something very unique. Not only is he good with the quarterbacks, but also he allows Jerry Jones to just be Jerry Jones. He allows Jerry Jones to come in and just meddle in what's going on as far as coaching, pretty much everything. Just allows Jerry Jones. I mean, how many owners in any professional sports have a weekly radio show? None. You would think Mark Cuban did, but not even Mark Cuban. So Jerry sits in on coaching meetings, quarterback meetings. He sits in on all kinds of stuff that have to do with football side of stuff. He's been known for meddling in things, and he's kind of in a way already announced and negotiated openly what Dak Prescott's future is going to be with the Cowboys. You think that takes some leverage away from his son and their front office staff, but he's the one that writes the checks.
Well, but Jerry Jones officially is owner, president, and general manager. I mean, that's his job title, and so he wears all those hats. I like Jerry Jones. I respect him greatly as a business person. I think what he's done with that franchise, increasing the value, building AT&T Stadium, what he's done with that venue, what he's done with in Dallas, but until the Amari Cooper trade, his football moves hadn't been very good for the last 10 years. I mean, he's had a couple of good draft picks. He wanted to take Johnny Manziel. His son talked him out of it, thank goodness. And so he has Dak Prescott, which turns out to be a pretty good move for the franchise. But yeah, he controls everything, and he's got a coach in there, in Jason Garrett, who fits with that. Bill Parcells did not. I mean, Bill Parcells wanted control, and nobody's going to get control of that franchise except for Jerry Jones. So I agree with you. I think that I didn't think Jason Garrett was going to get fired. I mean, Jerry Jones is loyal to a fault as well, and he's a great guy. I mean, I live here in Arkansas. Jerry Jones played for the University of Arkansas. He has a lot of Arkansas ties. His daughter and son-in-law live up here and have a real estate business, and so a lot of people know Jerry, and people like him. People that work for him love working for him, and so, but he, until recently, just hasn't made a lot of good football moves, and so, I think there's still. I think inside the league, people would still recommend that he get a general manager and relinquish those duties. But knowing a little bit about him, and he's not going to do that, right? He's just not going to do that. He got into it because he wanted to be that guy, and he is. And now they're 8-5, and they've got. I mean, you watch Dallas play. You mentioned SEC style of play, but SEC's been pretty successful over the last 15 years. They won a lot of national championships. Dallas, right now,
Alabama has won a lot of national championships. But hold on just a second, Kevin. Just want to welcome all of our viewers and followers over on Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us on Facebook Live. Go ahead, finish what you were saying.
No, Alabama, LSU, Auburn, and Florida have all won national championships in the last 15 years, 14 years, whatever it is. So that's a pretty successful conference. That style of play hasn't transpired to the NFL until now. I mean, last night, that was a painful football game to watch. It was ugly. It was Kirk Cousins looked lost. The Seahawks didn't look that much better on offense. They had a couple of decent drives. Their defense really bailed them out as well. But man, you look at Sunday night's game with the Bears and the Rams. 3 weeks ago, all we were talking about was 54-51. Was it Rams Chiefs? And now we're going, wow, there's defense here again, right? It's like that's interesting. And so it's December football. It's fun. I thought the weekend was great, as you mentioned in your preamble. I thought there were some interesting games. The Steelers inexplicably losing to the Raiders. How does that happen? The Chiefs. The Chiefs game against the Ravens was tremendous. That was just a great that was a great football game. And Patrick Mahomes with bailing his team out as well. So it was a great Week 14. The officiating was less than stellar. There were a lot of bad calls. I know you mentioned the call, the missed call on the field goal last night, which was a totally blown call. They had the chance to rectify, and they didn't. And so I was listening to Mike Pereira was on. I think he was on Rich Eisen's show yesterday, I believe, talking about some of the, and that was before last night's game. Talking about the officiating, and Mike Pereira, who was the head of officials for many years before he went on broadcast, he was being very diplomatic, but you could tell that he was disappointed as well. He recommended that they go to an eighth official that is in the booth, that has just all he does is sit in a booth by himself, and he can throw a virtual flag. And
a virtual flag.
Say, after some, yeah, like he could actually chime in if he sees something.
Is this it's like the Truman Show?
Throw a flag.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how logistically it would work, but if you think about it,
is this is this virtual flag? Is it somewhat similar to like viewers calling into PGA officiate? It's kind of what it is.
Yeah, pretty much. But if you think about some of the calls that have been missed this year. Which game was it? Was it the Pittsburgh game? No, it was. There was a call. I think it was Redskins game where Jordan Reed clearly got hit helmet to helmet. I guess it was the Cowboys game, Thanksgiving Day. Clearly, a helmet to helmet hit that not only knocked Jordan Reed out of the game, but changed the momentum in the game. And that was blatantly missed by the officials on the field, and you could see it real time. Like, you didn't have to show a replay. They just missed it real time. And so why not use technology? I mean, baseball has gone to technology. Basketball, last night I was watching the Lakers game against the Heat. They went to the monitor to see if one of the players was was fouled with a clear path to the basket. They use it. I think they need to do that because this is crazy when they're missing blatant calls. I mean, you could see when you watched that game last night, you could see that Bobby Wagner clearly used leverage to jump over the line of scrimmage. I mean, it was clear.
Yeah.
It wasn't a judgment call. They said, well, it's a judgment call. That's not a judgment call. He put his hands on the backside of his teammate and vaulted over the line. Now, it was a great athletic play. Don't get me wrong. I thought it was very, thought it was a cool play. But the league rules say you can't do that, and it was clear, and that changed the momentum. At that time, I believe the game was 6-0. Well,
it would have given him a first down had it stood.
Would have given a first down at the 14-yard line.
Exactly.
At the 14-yard line, and possibly could have given them gotten them a touchdown. They took the lead. At the very least, probably could have scored a field goal, make it 6-3. But that was a momentum swing because that was also the third time that the Vikings had been stopped inside the red zone. So that was kind of a killer play. But my point is that come on, you can't review that. I mean, they take 5 minutes to review a fumble call. That one would have taken about 10 seconds. And as you mentioned, they threw the flag and picked it up. I mean, they got the call right? I mean, they made the call right and then said, Now, I believe, here's what I believe. I believe the officials didn't know the rule. I think the officials thought that the rule was you couldn't leverage off of the opponent. Like you couldn't put your hands on the center or the guard and vault over. I don't think they realized that the rule states you can't put your hands on anybody to get leverage. And I think they discussed it and went, no, he put his hands on his own player. I think they misinterpreted the rule. That in my estimation. And so, we'll never know that, but I think that's why they picked up the flag. They got the call right to begin with. They huddled and said, "Oh no." The one guy probably overruled. So no. He can leverage from his own players. But the officiating, I believe, and Matthew, I think it's because the game is so fast these days. They added what they made like 23 guys full-time officials. The rest are still part-time. The NBA has full-time officials. Major League Baseball has full-time umpires. The NHL has full-time referees. I mean, come on. Because
the Major League Baseball Umpires Union is probably the strongest officiating unit in any sport. I would say it's probably better. Their officiating union may be better than the NFL Players Union. It's a pretty strong union. No argument for me there. You're right. No, the baseball unions are both the players and the umpires. I think the popcorn guys have a stronger union than the NFLPA, right? I mean, right.
The guys selling beer in the stadium probably have a better deal than the NFLPA. But
it's funny story. I just want to just for a second. So Nebraska's last home game, right, Senior Day, in the stands selling runzas, pizza, selling vendor items, was none other than U.S. Senator Ben Sasse. Nebraska's senator, who's on the Intelligence Committee, he's on the Judiciary Committee, a bunch of committees, right? He was with a scruffy beard in the stands as a vendor, hawking hot dogs. Now, some people have kind of said like, oh, yeah, that's cool that he do that. But I don't think people understand how tough it is to kind of get that gig and keep it. I mean, because everybody in Nebraska wants to go to the game and they can go for free, a lot of people will go as a vendor to watch the game and then sell stuff here and there to make some money, but they're mainly going to watch the game. But it was just a tangent I was thinking about when you said the popcorn guys probably have a better union. Go ahead, finish what you were saying.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was just saying I agree with you that the Major League Baseball umpires union is strong. That's why they've been able to resist replay and some other things in that sport. Unwritten rules, the whole different strike zones, all those kinds of things that I think detract from the game. I mean, you can tell when an umpire is trying to inflict his own impression on the outcome of a game. But I think in the NFL, I think the game's just gotten so fast, and these referees and officials, you don't have the same level of athleticism at the officiating crew as you do with the players. And I think they miss plays. I think they just don't see them. They're looking a lot of different directions, and I think that it would help to have another set of eyes, because the cameras see everything or a lot of things, and so I don't see why it wouldn't hurt to have somebody, because think about it. When we're watching the game, we see things that the officials miss if their angle isn't right, because now they've got the cameras that are above the field on those guide wires and things like that. I mean, you get angles that the officials can't see, and I don't know. You've been on the sidelines of a football game before, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to see at field level.
Yeah, and especially I've been on the sidelines for high school, college, and NFL. And the NFL, the game moves so much faster. And the thing is there's less people. There's less people. By far, the NFL has far less people on the sidelines than any other sport. Like, or any other, football. I mean, you have a 53-man roster, and a lot of those guys, sometimes they get hurt, and they're not even on the sideline.
Right. The college has, they dress out close to 100, right, for the home team. NFL, they have 45 guys dressed. They have less right there. And so, yeah, this is Mike Pereira having this recommendation. This isn't somebody without credibility, without, I think Mike Pereira probably at this point has probably over 35 years of experience between on the field and in the broadcast booth as an official. This is a guy that we should take seriously, in terms of that recommendation. And so I like the idea to get the eighth official in the booth to be able to make those calls, because clearly that person would have clearly said, don't pick up the flag, right? I mean, I'm talking about the Bobby Wagner block on the field goal. Don't pick up the flag. You made the right call. He clearly had his hands on his teammate and gained leverage on that call. Now, would that you have a point well taken? Would that have changed the outcome of the game? Probably not, because Kirk Cousins was clueless last night. And of course, the Vikings fired the offensive coordinator this morning after that game. But clearly,
and I know we talked about this a little bit earlier too. With DiFilippo, I know a lot of people are starting to think, this is going to kill his coaching chances. He got fired. I don't think it does. I think it's pretty comfortable to say that getting fired in the NFL doesn't preclude you from getting a job again. Even in a higher position, a lot of the guys in the NFL have been fired from a job at one point in time. DiFilippo did good in Philly, and I don't necessarily think it was such a great situation he walked into. On paper, it looked that way, but at the same time, Mike Zimmer is not that. He's not really so much of a people person, and we're talking about a team that is still winning their division and they're still in the playoffs. You know, we're talking about a playoff team in season, firing the coordinator. It doesn't sound exactly like it's a play calling thing. I think it's more of a personalities, they don't like working together sort of thing. Almost kind of like what was going on at the beginning of the year in Cleveland.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And of course, I mean, there's lots of guys that have been fired a lot. I mean, Norv Turner.
Yeah.
Norv Turner's had a lot of success, right? He's been head coach, he's been coordinators, and he's still in the league. He's been there for, I don't know how old he is. I think he's like 120. I mean, he's like, at least in dog years or something. I don't know. And Wade Phillips, a tremendous coordinator, defense coordinator for the Rams, has been at a number of spots. You're right. I mean, these guys are and actually DiFilippo was mentioned as one of the hot head coaching candidates as early as a couple weeks ago, right? That when these head coaching jobs, I mean, you've got Cleveland open, you've got the Packers open, you're probably going to have the Jaguars job might be open, the Buccaneers right there in your backyard. I'm not sure what they're going to do with their head coach. That one could be open. And so, we've got some high-profile vacancies that are going to be in the NFL, and he was mentioned as a guy that could take one of those jobs, right? Because they're all trying to find the next Sean McVay, the next hot guru that can come in and transform a franchise, whether it be Doug Peterson at Philly or Sean McVay, and so they're all looking for that guy. I'm not sure where Mike McCarthy's going to land. The guy's won a Super Bowl. You got to figure he's going to land somewhere. The former coach of the Packers that was let go last week. But yeah, I totally agree with you. And we don't agree a whole lot, but I do agree with you. I don't think that hurts his chances. It just gives him more time to find a job for next year, and it could be a lot of he'll resurface fairly quickly. I don't think all the problems with the offense at Minnesota are his fault. I mean, there is a head coach there that made some decisions as well, and we'll see. I mean, I questioned the whole Kirk Cousins thing as it being a Redskins fan. I mean, is that their guy? They showed a stat last night, this morning on Dan Patrick's show. They shared a stat that Kirk Cousins is like 4-24 against teams with winning records. That's the guy that you thought could take you to the Super Bowl?
Well,
0-7 on Monday night.
4 years, 100% guaranteed. That it seems to be. I mean, but that's the thing is he wasn't, and I was watching that game, last night too, and he wasn't. I wouldn't say he wasn't exactly making the best decisions. He missed some open guys, hung on the ball a little too long a few times. There was things that, again, there are things that you feel at this point in time in his career that he's learning to audible out of stuff. Maybe issues with pre-snap reads. I don't know. Again, different offenses, sometimes coordinators and offenses are saying, don't worry about the pre-snap read as much. I want you to worry about what happens after the snap and then read the defense, which gives you a lot less time. I didn't see many quick throws. And usually if your quarterback's struggling, if your team's struggling, you start to move towards quick throws and high percentage run plays and more screens. And I've kind of missed on some of those opportunities, I felt. Let me welcome in He's an editor for our boxing segment, as well as the host for the Boxing Source radio show, and one of our top contributors for college football, Mr. James Bell. How are you doing tonight, James?
Hey, what's going on, man?
Doing good. So, what do you think of the game from last night, or the play from this weekend in the NFL?
Last night's game was just like it was ugly. We kind of like saw, how the expectations of the Minnesota Vikings kind of like was way above what they actually have done on the field. They supposed to be favored to take the NFC North division, considering that they were able to get to the NFC Championship game last year. And then they, changed quarterbacks because they felt that, Case Keenum was not, a guy that would, be the guy to make the big plays for him. But with Kirk Cousins there on the field and, the play of the offensive line being considerably down this season, they basically had like a 500 record of sorts here so far with 3 games left. They gave Kirk Cousins a lot of money, but for this season, it's not really, coming through. And, like it was said a little bit earlier, his record against teams with the winning record is not that impressive at all. So, I mean, I feel they would have had a chance to get the win here because it wasn't like, Seattle's offense was really doing that much, for most of the game. And they just couldn't do anything to take advantage of that. That's what I got out of it.
So,
yeah, you mentioned, James. I mean, the Minnesota offensive line just couldn't do anything last night, right? They with the Seattle pass rush. It was, I mean, they couldn't get Dalvin Cook free. They just couldn't do anything.
Nah, they couldn't.
And Dalvin Cook's a guy that was looking at, a year ago, essentially was in the running for Rookie of the Year before he got hurt.
Yeah, but the thing is, that was his problem. I mean, he keeps getting hurt. So, I mean, it's like, his first, that first half of the season, he missed like, 4 or 5 games. So, you really didn't have much consistency there in the backfield. So, I'm not, really all too convinced about, what Dalvin Cook could do there in the backfield as of yet. Specifically, like I said, the offensive line are not really doing that good at all here over the course of the season. But, I think that, Seattle gave him a lot of chances there, particularly, after the end of the second quarter, where they couldn't, score with Russell Wilson throwing that dumb pass the way that he did and it being intercepted. So they just gotta, end up doing better because they're still there as far as like the second wild card spot, because it doesn't seem like anybody else wants to get that second wild card right now. You got the Panthers blowing game after game against teams that they ain't supposed to be losing to. So it's basically, the Vikings, they're to lose,
Which they probably will. I think somebody else is going to jump up there unless the Vikings can right the ship with their offensive line. But nobody else. You're right. The Redskins have 2 quarterbacks with broken legs. I don't remember that ever happening. They bring in Mark Sanchez, which is probably the worst decision on the face of the planet. He's so ineffective. It's ridiculous. They lose 40 to 16 after they were down 40-0 after 3 quarters to a Giants team that was left for dead 3 weeks ago. I mean, how bad is that?
But
the Panthers have lost 5 in a row, right? I'm not sure what Cam Newton's doing. I'm not sure whether he's got some issues with health wise.
And speaking of Norv, saying
Eagles,
he had so many jobs. Just think about we were crowning him as a genius when Cam was doing good 6 weeks ago, and now again Cam has fallen off. Looking, I don't know if it's injury or if it's just Cam making dumb decisions, but is this fallback on Norv Turner now? I mean,
Yeah,
and
then you got the Eagles, who are struggling as well. So, you've got 4 or 5 teams there. And by the way, don't look now, but you have the Packers now back in the mix because they're only now a game back of the Vikings, and they're 5-7-1, so they're right behind those 6 and 7 teams. So the Packers, all of a sudden, you got to go, well, they fired their coach, but they've got Aaron Rodgers. Can they get back in the mix? And so it's going to be a real. I think the Seahawks are going to get that first wild card. I think they're playing really well. They've got a very favorable schedule because the Seahawks have Arizona and the 49ers the next 2 weeks, and so they can actually clinch that first wild card spot this weekend if they win and some things go their way. So I think they're in. I think it's all going to be a scramble for that second wild card spot, which is going to be interesting to see who can play. The Redskins are done because they've got no quarterback. Talk about a front office gaffe. Colt McCoy goes down. They had nobody ready. I mean, you lose Alex Smith. Don't you think you're going to have somebody ready in the second spot just in case? And they didn't. They had Sanchez, who they'd signed a week before, who was clearly not ready to play. The Eagles are struggling. They're having the Super Bowl hangover or whatever, but they could sneak in there. But you've got the Packers looming, and so we'll see what happens. I mean, it's going to be interesting. Now, will that? And by the way, the New York Giants have a path. I know. You're both probably shaking your head. There's no way they have a path. It takes a lot of. It's going to take a lot of help, but they have a path, and the Giants have a history. They won a Super Bowl by winning their last 6 games of the regular season, and they won a Super Bowl that way. Mm-hmm. And they got in as the number 6 seed and won the Super Bowl. So, don't count Eli Manning out, only because the other teams that they're competing with for that 6th spot are all struggling. There's no
they're all
in there.
Consistent.
They're all limping to the finish, right? James, I mean, they're all just trying to get to the finish line. The Seahawks, I'll tell you one thing right now. If I'm the number 3 seed, which right now it looks like it's gonna be the number 4 seed. If I'm Dallas, I don't know if I want to see the Seahawks coming to my place the first week of the playoffs. I mean, that's going to be and the Bears with that defense. Boy, those are 2 dangerous teams right now in December. That's are dangerous teams.
Yeah,
they're playing.
They're playing. That, the Bears pretty much got the. I mean, they had the 3rd seed, but it's not like they had that thing sealed. I mean, they're still like 1 game back of Dallas. So, unless who the Bears got left, they got the Packers, the 49ers, and the Vikings. Well, they got to win that Packers game, man. They got to beat. I say they beat the Packers so that they could get the Packers up playoff contention, and then try to handle the rest of the business because they're only 1 game ahead of 1 game ahead of Dallas, and Dallas has won 5 straight. So, and I kind of see Dallas winning the rest of their games. They got the Bucs, they got the Giants. And they got who was it from the AFC? They playing the Colts. Oh yeah, the Colts. Now that's going to be the game though.
Because that game could. That game could mean something to the Colts and not that much to Dallas by that time. We don't know, right? Because that could be a game that Dallas doesn't really have to do anything in. We don't know yet because of the way that the seedings could go, depending on what the Bears do in the North. But the Colts played their way back in. They get shut out. They get shut out by the Jaguars, and they come right back and they beat the Texans. I mean, this was a crazy week. There were so many crazy games this week. That's why even though Matthew, I do bet on games, I don't bet the NFL. Because
and here's a crazy thing
it's
too.
A great example of why you don't bet the NFL.
You talked a little bit about the Redskins earlier, having 2 quarterbacks break their leg. By the way, shout out to the guy that must be having like the best 2 weeks of his life. He gets drafted to San Diego, the San Diego Fleet in the new American, was it the AAF league, the new spring football league that's competing with the XFL over the spring. First round draft pick in that as a quarterback to San Diego Fleet, and then next week gets called in to be the backup, then immediately ends up being the starting quarterback for the Redskins. Like, that's the craziness. And obviously, honestly, and this is why I tell players, when you go through these scouting combines, when you're talking to scouts, when you're talking to front office people, coaches, stuff like that, and just people in life, you never know who you're going to meet, who you're going to talk to, or more importantly, who that person's going to end up being. Because I think, now, not discrediting Josh's ability or play, but he has this opportunity because of the connections he has, because of the relationships he's made in the past. Also being able to prove himself to be an NFL backup, but also because of those connections. So mainly his time when he was in with the Bengals with Jay Gruden, knowing Jay Gruden. So that, without a doubt, is one of the big reasons why he even has the job right now. But just within that within the division, the Bengals division, they're dead last. Technically, they're one of 18 teams that still mathematically can make the playoffs. But the team just ahead of them at 5-7-1, the Browns, could actually still win the division. The Browns have the Ravens. They play the Ravens. They end up, the Broncos are this week, and they have the Bengals. So they have 2 games within the division that they're playing this week. And although the Ravens have been kind of, as of late, playing more of that old school style of football, more so run first and then do something off the run, is it something that's going to be sustainable for them? I don't know. I think every team in that division is kind of what's going to happen. I mean, at the beginning of the season, to say that the Steelers weren't going to make the playoffs in that division would have been kind of saying, like, you're not going to see the Patriots win their division. It's kind of unheard of. Not really. It's an afterthought to think that the Browns, who just a few weeks ago fired their head coach, are now, with 3 games left, winning out, could end up winning the division. Obviously with a little bit of help, but it's great. 18 teams outside of the 8 division championships 18 teams right now in the NFL are in a position where they could potentially win, potentially get into the playoffs. This is unheard of.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Now, out of all the wild card teams, I do think the Chargers have the best chance of winning the Super Bowl as a wild card team. Just simply because.
Oh yeah, I mean, and that game this Thursday, is going to be awesome. I mean, Chargers Chiefs Thursday night. Unfortunately, I don't like Thursday night football because, the road team has a really difficult time, to contend in that game. But this should be a really good game. I mean, if the Chargers have Melvin Gordon back, and that's a big if right now. I'm not. Right now they say they think he's going to be back. If he's back, that's going to be a very compelling game. It is anyway, just because Patrick Mahomes against Rivers. What a game, and that's a big game because if the Chargers beat the Chiefs, that opens up the home field advantage for some other teams. And doesn't if the Chargers beat the Chiefs, are they tied? Will they be tied, or the Chiefs only have one loss? I don't have it up on my.
No, they'll be tied. They'll be tied record wise, but Chiefs will have
because the Chiefs have 3
advantage for division record. So
okay, so but there's still 2 weeks left after this one. So
and
football game.
And Monday,
Melvin
Gordon did not practice on Monday. But Tuesday he was limited. And again, it's due to that knee injury. So he was limited in practice today. But we'll still leave him at questionable.
So the short week kind of hurt. Right. So,
yep.
but that's still. I mean, they've got a pretty effective backup running back there in Los Angeles. But that game, I mean, you got to watch that game. I mean, to watch Patrick Mahomes throw the football is he is ridiculous. His arm strength is unbelievable. That what he can, the distance he can throw the football across his body is unbelievable. I think Favre used to make some throws like that, but not many guys have been able to do that in the history of the league.
That was actually one of his last throw of his career was back across his body across the field and to be an interception. But
right.
Which kind of
in the AFC Championship game.
the dagger in the hearts of Vikings fans. Packers fans were happy to see it, but I'm just it's typical Favre, the epitome of a gamble, right?
And Mahomes has some of that, but what Mahomes has that Favre never had, and Favre's a great quarterbacks in the league, Hall of Famer. But Mahomes can extend the play with his feet a little bit better than Favre did. Now, Favre was a little bit bigger. I don't think Favre was any taller. Maybe Mahomes is 6'2". Favre was a little bit taller, a little bit heavier. But Mahomes can literally, extend the plays. And his field vision for a second-year guy is unbelievable. I mean, what he sees out there is crazy. And this is without Sammy Watkins and without Kareem Hunt. I mean, we thought, well, those guys go out. What can he do? It doesn't matter. And he hit Talik Hill on that fourth down pass. Sunday when he scrambles around and throws the ball 50 yards at Talik Hill, triple covered and hits him right in the numbers. That was insane. That was just an insane play. It just shows his talent. Now, and he was going against, by the way, the number one defense in the league. He wasn't throwing against, the Cardinals or the Niners or a team that's a great defense, and they challenged him, and he responded and won the football game. Should the Ravens have won? Yeah, the Ravens should have won that game, but they didn't because Mahomes turned a couple miracles, and so we'll see this Thursday night, right? I mean, we'll see. Right now, I mean, it's kind of close for me because it's tough because the Chiefs have no history of success the last many, many years in the playoffs. And so when you look at some of these teams that are making some surges, especially on their defensive side of the ball, the Cowboys, the Bears, the Seahawks, you go, can the Chiefs win the Super Bowl? I have to say, yeah, they can because of Mahomes. And if the playoffs go through Kansas City, which it looks like now they will, but we don't know, that game Thursday night will determine a little bit of that. But if you got to go to Kansas City to play at Arrowhead and they get a week off to prepare for you, I tell you, this might be Kansas City's year, but their defense isn't quite as good as some of the others. But the AFC isn't defensive heavy anyway. The Patriots are vulnerable. The Steelers might not make the playoffs. We don't know. If the Steelers don't, the Ravens might, and the Ravens have a good defense. The Chargers are, they're pretty good on both sides of the ball. But right now, I think Thursday night's going to. I believe that if Kansas City wins Thursday night, they don't clinch home field, but they're going to be close, depending on what happens the rest of the weekend.
Is it? Do you think it's just kind of looking at the teams preseason? A lot of teams, just looking over the standings here, don't seem to be anywhere near what they were predicted to be. I mean, the parity in the NFL is astounding. I mean, if you say Bills and you say Dolphins, we probably feel the Dolphins, that's not a good football team, and the Bills are really bad. But the Dolphins are actually 7-6. They're a game above 500. That record is better than the Broncos, who are actually statistically still in the hunt. It is the same record as the Ravens, actually one better record than the Steelers. It's better than the Browns and Bengals, who technically are mathematically still in it. It is the same record as the Colts and Titans, who are tied for second in that division. It is a better record than the Eagles and the Redskins and the Giants, who all are mathematically still in it. It is better than the Vikings, who pretty much everybody thought the Vikings were going to win that division this year. If you didn't live in Green Bay, and it's better than the Packers and Lions, who are essentially tied for last and mathematically still in it. And it's better than the Panthers, who are sitting at second in that division, and better than the Bucks, who actually are still mathematically in it too. Which we all agree the Bucks are not going to get it. Nothing. The Bucks will find a way not to get in. It doesn't. They could win all their games, and the Panthers lose all their games. And the Bucks. I don't think with the Bucks playing the Ravens actually this week. I thought we talked earlier, Kevin. I thought it was the Redskins. No, it's the Ravens. They play the Ravens this week, Cowboys next week, and in the season at home against the Falcons.
Yeah, and the Falcons, boy. Man, I think that's the most disappointing team in 2018 right there, the Falcons. I mean, you got those guys that they have on offense, and they have a 4-9 record.
And that's the thing is, like, if everything that where everybody is saying the NFL is definitely moving to. And what you have to win is a quarterback that can push it downfield, wide receivers that can make plays, and running backs that can that are multifunctional. That's what your offense needs. Jesus, I mean, they have a plethora of it. You know, I mean, Coleman, Freeman, they got Riley. You know, and those are three of the newer components to that offense, and that's not even mentioning the two stars on the offense. You know, so
yeah. And I mean, you even have like Matt Ryan. He's on his way to having about 4,600 yards passing or something like that at minimum for the season with 28 touchdowns, and they can't muster up enough points to beat teams. It's like they have a red zone deficiency or something like that. A lot of the games that they lost in this 5-game losing streak, they haven't reached over 3 touchdowns. Like, you wouldn't expect that with the team that has Julio Jones on it, has like multiple other receivers, Mohamed Sanu. They got Freeman in there, like you said, a running back, Coleman in there, running back. Like, they shouldn't be having these type of deficiencies.
So the Falcons, in their first 5 games of the season, only scored 29 points. In the first 5 games. They were shut out in the first, well, I guess that's preseason. That's not fair. Let me run that back. But still, 12 points against the Eagles to open up the season. They did put 31 up on the Panthers. And they did have a good battle against the Saints at the beginning of the season, putting up 37, but lost 43 to 37. Put up 36. See, that's the thing is when you're putting up 30s and you're not winning, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
Well,
actually, their red zone efficiency is actually top 10 in the league. But
you have to get there.
There's a lot of teams that are up there.
And you have to stop the other team.
Red zone efficiency, but they ain't that good.
But look how many times teams have put up, 30 or more. Okay, so we'll start with game 3. The Saints put up 43. The very next week, the Bengals put up 37. The very next week after that, the Steelers put up 41. The Bucks put up 29 on them, and the Bucks should have won that game. Let me see here. The Browns put up 28 on them. The Saints on the second meeting put up the Saints put up 31 in the second meeting. The Ravens 26. The Packers put up 34 on them this week.
Yeah, I think the Saints pretty much nearly shut down the Falcons' offense in that game. That wasn't really much of a competitive game, if I recall. So, it wasn't like man. But them to have like a losing season this year, like who would have expected them to have a losing season, with the team they got?
And that's the thing, And what I'm seeing here is this last game, 20 points. Game before last, 16. Game before that, 17. When you're not even getting 3 touchdowns with those kind of weapons and firepower, I mean, is that a Matt Ryan problem? Is that his? He needs to change out. Is it an offensive coordinator issue?
Man, I don't know.
What is it? Because clearly you have talent.
It's probably, and this is what we're seeing now in the league is, we're seeing offensive line issues, right? I mean, because of the nature of the game, who are two of the highest paid guys in the league? Aaron Donald and Khalil Mack. I'm talking outside of quarterbacks, okay?
Yeah.
Because quarterbacks are a whole different animal. But it's a pass rushing league. So if we saw it last night, the Seahawks just overwhelmed the Vikings offensive line. That was the game, right? I mean, the Vikings could do nothing. They couldn't run. They couldn't throw. They were overwhelmed at the line of scrimmage. And I think we're seeing a transformation now because what's happening now is the offenses have all the rules that they're in their favor. The defensive backs can't touch a receiver. They can't bump more than 5 yards down the line of scrimmage. They can't do anything. They can't even stop in the line of scrimmage. But the one thing the defenses can do, and they're starting to do, with guys like the Browns have Miles Jack. You get guys like that. Even the Redskins have Kerrigan. You get a pass rusher that can disrupt your offense, and I think that's what you're seeing. I mean, the Saints have that. They've got a couple of good linebackers, defensive linemen. I think that's what the defenses are going to. They're saying, okay, I can't do much at the back end, but if you can't get the ball off, then it doesn't matter that you've got guys running wide open in the backfield. But because if your quarterback doesn't have time to throw, then I'm going to disrupt the play. I forget which game it was I was watching. It might have been the Sunday night game where they showed the stat. I think it might have been Trubisky. When he got the ball out under 2.5 seconds, he was, like 90% completion rate. When he had to wait longer than 2.5 seconds, meaning that he was subject to getting tackled or sacked, he didn't complete a pass. And so you're seeing, I think you made the point about last night's game that Kirk Cousins wasn't getting the ball out quickly enough, right? They had to get the ball out more quickly because of that pass rush. And so these little dump off, these little short passing routes. Last year, by the way, the Pittsburgh Steelers, I heard a stat today on one of the talk shows that Le'Veon Bell last year for the Steelers, he caught 85 passes. 85 passes.
Yeah.
Right? That's what, 7 a game, 6 to 7 a game. And so when you take Le'Veon Bell, I mean, I know James Conner's done a pretty good job of running the ball, but when you take Le'Veon Bell off of that team, he wasn't just a running back. He's catching the ball. They're dumping it off to him. They're little short pass plays.
But that's part of why he held out. And that's why he wanted a higher contract, because he's playing two positions. That's what his argument is. That's what running backs' arguments have been recently moving forward, as well as tight ends. Because tight ends in offenses, even if you're in 11 or 12 personnel and you're set up, even if you're in a traditional tight end spot, you may move wide. You may be out in the receiver 2 spot, or receiver 1 spot. It just depends.
Is he going to get that $14 million back? I mean,
no.
$14 million he gave up.
He will never recoup that money.
Not to play this year. And he's 30 or 29. I mean, he's not 24 or 25. I mean, is he ever going to get that money back? And in the NFL, it's not guaranteed money. I mean, Kirk Cousins has guaranteed money.
Well, that was guaranteed. Money, that 14.
Those guys do. Huh?
That Le'Veon Bell money right there was guaranteed money.
Yeah, it was. And oh my gosh. I mean, I get it. I understand his position. I understand his negotiating position. But really? $14 million. Most of us would take that 1 year and retire, right? I mean, give me $14 million. I'm gone. You'll never hear from me again, Matthew. You'll never hear from me again. You'll be like, God, I wonder where Kevin Crest went. I'm on an island.
See,
that's
if
where
you
I
give
am.
me,
I'm sipping margaritas on a beach chair, right?
If you give me,
I mean, I'm nowhere.
I would buy nicer equipment. I would still be doing this every Tuesday. I'd still be $14 million doesn't change my life other than I have nicer shit. That's really what it does. It buys me nicer shit. That's what it does.
Good for you, not me. No,
I would make the trip
really
this year
nice
to California to the
around.
national championship game.
No, you just never hear from me. It'd be like, where did he go? Because I'd be off somewhere. But I would show up at front court seat, front row seats at the Lakers game. You'd be like, oh, there he is. Look at him. I know that guy. I recognize him. And, I'd show up. I'd be like cameo appearances places just because I could buy it. But no, I'm just joking.
You got new glasses.
But but Le'Veon Bell, $14 million. I mean, I don't know who's giving him advice, but I mean, good grief, take the franchise tag, play your year, and then do your thing. But because number one, I mean, it's a lot of money, but number two, as a team, this is a guy that has held out now 2 years in a row. Is it 3 years in a row? He sits out the season.
2.
So I sign you. And are you going to play for me? So I think the long game. I think he messed up the long con here. I think he messed it. Now somebody will sign him because he's talented.
Yeah, and my sources have said
back,
since being out of football, he's kind of regressed back to where he was that rookie year. He's put on more weight, not good weight, but he's put on more weight. Yeah. So again, what are you going to get with a year out of football? And again, it's not to say that he won't pick it up quick, and he's not going to lose that extra weight, and he's not going to get back in football shape, and he's not going to be as amazing as he's been. Not to say that. I definitely think that I as a GM wouldn't have an issue of signing him to a 5-year deal, around that $14-16 million a year mark. But obviously, it's not going to all be guaranteed money. But he wants to push it closer to the $18-20 million mark, which is where quarterbacks are at.
He's not getting it.
Because he plays running back, he plays receiver, and a lot of the game of as we see, a lot of that production in that offense for the last 3 years have went through him. He has been the best player, one of the best players in football the last 3 years. He's been one of the most valuable players in football the last 3 years.
Yeah, but he was also playing behind a Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line. He had Ben Roethlisberger at quarterback, and he had Antonio Brown on the edge. Now,
but you know what? The more we sit again, I've been kind of against skill guys in first round of the draft, but there's certain guys that are definitely worth first round. When you have a Le'Veon Bell, when you have a Ezekiel Elliott, when you have Todd Gurley, Melvin Gordon, guys like that, you have to get those guys in the first round. Saquon Barkley. And again, I said, I know a lot of people were really discouraged to hear me say that, this guy is really going to be a talent in the NFL. He's going to translate well. And I know a lot of people said that, no, it's just a college. It's a flash in the pan in college. But obviously this year, we've seen him, just be a wrecking crew there. And that's the thing. It's like if you have one of these transcendent running backs, it gives you so much more flexibility. And it just makes me see with having Saquon Barkley and having Odell Beckham, how is it the Giants just aren't winning more football games? I mean,
still 5-8.
Yes.
So I
mean they got contract value wise. Odell Beckham, they've sunk $90 million of value into him. They got Oliver Vernon, $85 million. They got another $84 million in Eli. All right, and they're
5-8.
They're 5-8.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? Of course, you had
62.5 in Janoris Jenkins.
Didn't really, they didn't really show up their defense either. So they still got questions on that side of the ball.
If I asked you, would you rather have Janoris Jenkins or Luke Kuechly? Who would you say?
Oh, I'd take Kuechly every day of the week.
James?
Yeah, of course, Luke.
Janoris Jenkins' contract value is $62.5 million. Luke Kuechly, $61.8.
That's because 2 years ago, the Giants loaded up on their defense. That's what they did. They loaded up on the defense. They paid the big money in the defense. They didn't pay OBJ. They didn't pay anybody else. They loaded up in the defense. And the defense last year in 2017 fell flat on its face, and that's why they have a new head coach. And so that's their problem. They got all that money tied up. But I say they're 5-8, but they're 5-8. They weren't they 2-7? So they won 3 of the last 4 games. I mean, this is a team, and I'm looking at I'm looking at the standings here in NFC, and you go, they're not exactly, they're not eliminated yet, right? Nope. And so, and the Panthers are a train wreck. I think Cam's hurt. They've lost 5 in a row. The Falcons are dead. They've lost 5 in a row. And you look at the Eagles and the Redskins in their own division, you go, those guys aren't playing well. The Vikings, Kirk Cousins' confidence is shot. The Buccaneers, I don't know what's going on with them, but the Giants are sitting right there. I mean, they can win out. I mean, if they win out, if they get to 8-8, and by the way, as we've mentioned, they've got the Titans. They've got the Titans, Colts, and Cowboys. Now, hear me out here. The Colts could actually be eliminated by the time they play them. The Titans are tough, but they have them at home. And that last game against the Cowboys might have nothing to play for. Depending, I'm just saying it could be. I'm not. There's a lot of time left, obviously, in the season because the Cowboys should have, if the Cowboys win one more game, don't they have the division clinched, James? Because they've got a way better division record than anybody else. I mean, I don't think they can be caught.
Yeah,
they only have one more division game.
If they didn't, have the record that they had, they would probably already have the division, after this week, because they only have that one loss so far to the Redskins in the division.
Yeah, and they've only got one
left.
Yeah, they only have one division game left. So if they win this, if they beat the Colts, if the Cowboys beat the Colts, which I don't know, the Colts are kind of this schizophrenic team. I don't know what to expect week in, week out. But it is at Indianapolis. But if they beat the Colts, they clinch the division. And they're not really going to be able to move up in seeding very far because you've got the Saints and the Rams.
Unless the Packers beat the Bears, then I mean they'd be tied. So
yeah, they could get the number 3 seed. You're right. Yeah, but they're not going to get a bye. They're not going to catch the Saints or the Rams, right? So that it's I'm not sure they're going to be able to move up that far. But my point being that the Giants are playing really well. I mean, if you watch them, it's like, where was this team? It's the same team. Where were these guys 6 weeks ago? It's kind of like the Cowboys. It's like, what the hell? What happened 5 weeks ago to these teams? So, now, obviously, last week was against the Redskins with Mark Sanchez is a stiff. He's so horrible. It was so bad to watch that as a Redskins fan. It was just horrible. But the Redskins are decimated by injury. They have the most injuries of any team in the NFL this season. It's terrible. But the Giants look pretty good. I mean, Saquon Barkley, that guy can take over a game. I mean, he's like Zeke. And that was with. Oh, by the way, the Giants won 40-16 with Beckham out of the game. He didn't even play against the Redskins. And you go, wow, what the heck? So it should be interesting to see who gets in that 6th seed. I think the Seahawks are going to grab the 5th seed. Do you agree with that, James? I mean, they're playing really well. I mean, that's a good football team too, and they're well coached. But that 6th seed is going to be interesting to see who sneaks in there, and if they do they have a shot? At getting to the next round, and I'm not sure any of them will. But if the Giants make it, the Giants will have won 6 of their last 7 games. They'll be hot. So they, some of the other guys might limp in if the Giants stub their toe and don't get in. It's going to be a not very good football team getting in there. So,
and
I don't give them much thought.
This past weekend, I called that the Dolphins would win that game, and I didn't predict in that sort of fashion with the last play of the game.
Come on, you didn't call that.
I called that. I called that. Anyways.
Whatever it's called.
Anyways.
But the Dolphins almost always beat the Patriots in Miami. I mean,
exactly. That's why I went with trending. Come on. Vegas wasn't favoring the Patriots that heavy in that game. It was a pretty close line.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. That was a crazy. But the thing about that game though, and is that the Dolphins practice that play every Saturday at the end of their practice. So that wasn't an accident. I mean, yes, it was probably a 1 in. I've heard somebody say 1 in a 500 shot, 1 in a 100 shot. It was a long shot, but they practiced that play, and the Patriots didn't have their defense up. Then Gronkowski was out there. He looked like Herman Munster.
He almost blew a knee trying to make a move. He was.
I know. He looked like my grandmother. Running after me in the street. I mean, it was terrible. It was embarrassing.
He looked very unathletic.
Kenyon Drake. I mean, it really was.
Yeah.
But golly, Ned. I mean, come on. But they practiced that play. But the thing about that play, but they've talked about on other talk shows too. Belichick had a Hail Mary defense back there. They figured, well, we'll put Gronk back, and he said it before. You see Gronk out there a lot on the Hail Marys, but Tannehill can't throw the ball 70 yards. He's playing on one leg, for God's sake.
Sure.
Right? So
he can only have someone out there thinking that they would throw the ball 70 yards plus. He ain't no Aaron Rodgers.
No.
Yeah.
No, he can't do that.
But okay, so in Belichick's defense there, if you figure he can't throw it that far and you have everybody back, then it's going to go in front of you, and you should be able to have guys that maybe even aren't normal tacklers go up and make tackles because they're in front of you. So the likeliness of them.
He didn't have everybody back.
But that's why laterals.
He didn't have everybody back.
Those lateral plays are a very low percentage of conversion. Very, very low.
It's ridiculously low. It's like it never happened.
I mean, if you listen to the broadcast from the Dolphins on the radio broadcast, like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Oh, lateral. Oh, what? Oh, my God.
Oh.
It was a touchdown. I cannot believe it.
Yes.
It was
an Ian Eagle.
Who
for
was
CBS,
it?
Who was calling the game? He was on Dan Patrick yesterday, and he was like, you don't prepare for that to be successful, because he said, I've called thousands of games. I mean, Ian Eagle's been calling games for 22, 23 years, and he said, we see these all the time, and they never work. So as a play-by-play guy, he's just preparing for the fumble and the end of the game and all that kind of stuff. And when it actually worked, he had to totally, redo what he was going to say and how he was going to call the play, because you don't expect that to work. You just don't expect it to work. And so when it worked, it was like, oh my gosh, it was working. He had to totally, redo it. It was a fascinating interview.
I heard.
That never works. I mean,
one host. I don't remember who it was. One host called it like.
There's only two that I remember.
That play, the way it sounded was like alarm goes off at 6:00 Monday morning. Oh, I gotta go to work, and the bell. You clocking out exactly. Friday, going to Christmas party Friday. Yeah, that's the way it went. Your entire week was in the epitome of the call for that play.
Like it was like, Tannehill across the middle, made the play. Oh, here's the lateral. There's another. Oh! It was. Now, I've only seen two. There was that one,
and the Music City Miracle.
Stanford Cal game.
Well, the Music City Miracle.
Yes, the Music City Miracle. 3. Yes, the Music City Miracle. The 3. Those are the only ones I remember actually being successful that I've seen in all the games I've watched. And Matthew, I watch a lot of games.
And Stanford Cal, that was where the band came on the field, right?
That was in the band. Yeah, that was through the band. That was crazy. That was the most crazy. Now, we've seen Hail Marys, right? I mean, hell, Aaron Rodgers had 3 or 4 just in the last couple of years.
15 minutes or so.
But not the last. They never work. They never work because they get so. But the thing about the reason I brought that up was the Dolphins practice that play, and so they actually get better at. Usually, the guy can't catch a lateral, right? You throw it and the guy drops it and the game's over.
Yeah.
But they only lateraled twice. Kenyon Drake took that the last 30 yards by himself. It wasn't this frenetic lateral. They only lateraled twice.
And literally, in putting Gronk's ACL, MCL, UCL, NFL career,
right?
all in jeopardy.
XFL, USFL,
WWE, like the KFC. He put his KFC in jeopardy on that play.
Whatever.
Like that
Yeah.
chicken bowl about came up.
That was so embarrassing. Oh my god!
Oh,
I felt so badly for him.
I hope somebody memed it. I'm gonna look for those memes now.
Do you think Gronk's gonna retire? I mean, he can hardly play.
He should.
Man.
He should.
And in talking,
he should.
He has all of his money.
Oh yeah.
He hasn't spent any of his money.
And he's getting paid for Tide Pods. Before Tide Pods.
Well, yeah, he's got endorsement deals. He's got the whole deal.
Tide Pods, yeah, Tide Pods.
He almost has to retire.
Why not?
But he's only 30 years old. But he's worn out. I mean, he's done.
Hey,
I mean,
that's the NFL for you. I mean, that's how long usually most of those careers are. Pretty much, at the max, 9 years, especially for, a guy at the skill position. So you pretty much, used to.
Well, the thing is, he only has one more year left on his contract. So I would venture that he would be back for that 1 year if Tom Brady wants him back for that 1 year. If not,
Brady will be back. I mean,
that's the thing
Brady
is,
will be back. I mean,
if Brady wants him back.
yeah. If Brady wants Gronk back, yes, I got you. Yes, yeah. That's going to be,
he's he's 12.
The thing is,
he's $12 million in cap hit.
There's only 45 roster spots. But look at the history of the Patriots. They get rid of guys before they're done. So I mean, the Patriots might go, we don't want you back, but he's under contract.
Yeah, he has one more year.
I don't know how that would work.
Well, that's the thing is, like, if they cut him, that's $10 million in dead money. $2 million in dead money. It's $2 million. They'd save $10 million by releasing him. Essentially, they could save $10 million and release him.
But it still hits their cap
for $2 million.
But it still hits their cap.
Yeah, for $2 million if they cut him. If they keep him, it's 12.
They might cut him. I mean, they've done it. They've done it to a lot of guys. I mean, he wouldn't be the first guy to get cut by the Patriots.
I mean, his salary's $9,
right. I mean,
and then he gets a roster bonus. See, that's the thing is, if they cut him before March the 13th, they would save even more money because there is no roster. Because that $750 roster bonus option, as well as the workout, all that stuff, that's paid after March the 13th. That's all going to be guaranteed money after March the 13th. So that's the $10 million towards the cap.
They could buy him out. They listen, for what he's meant to that franchise. I wouldn't be surprised if Robert Kraft doesn't just buy him out, give him $3 million and go see you, right? Because he's meant a lot. I mean, he won them a couple of Super Bowls.
I almost feel like. I mean, if you had to look at him and you're like, does he have one more year left on him? I think most of it'd be like, yeah, I think he has at least one more left. Maybe he could, but after that, I don't think he has any value. See, if I was the Patriots,
a couple of years ago.
That's the thing is if I was the Patriots, I would have traded him a couple of years ago. And I have sources said that they had some interest. They took phone calls on it, but they never.
Talk. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was talk. Yeah, there was talk that he was on the trading block, and they didn't pull the trigger. Yeah, I agree with you. I heard that too. So, I mean, they might just buy him out because the Patriots are also masters at managing the cap and all that. I mean, right? I mean, they've done a masterful job in free agency the last 22 years. People talk about Brady and Belichick, but they don't talk about how effectively they've managed the salary cap. And by the way, Brady's not making Aaron Rodgers money. Brady's making half Aaron Rodgers money, right? So they don't have a bunch of money tied up in who's arguably the greatest of all time. They've done an incredible job with that. I don't know why Brady doesn't take more, although I think his wife out earns him double anyway, but So I guess he doesn't need it, and his ego doesn't seem to require it. He just likes winning championships. So, he's never made. I don't think he's made Manning money. What did Peyton? Did Peyton make? Was it $28 million 1 year? I think Brady's never sniffed that. I mean, he's at what, 16, something like that. Now, $16 million, like I said before, give me $60 million, I disappear, and he's doing it every year. But yeah, they've done a masterful job in keeping that. And the Warriors, by the way, flip the NBA a second. The Warriors are having to play the same game in the NBA, trying to. They've got three max guys on that team, and they're trying to manage that because that's not going to work out long term with Durant, Thompson, and Curry. But the Patriots have done a fantastic job of plugging and playing players without having to pay anybody a whole lot of money. They've got nobody on that team that's making tons of money. So the front office of the Patriots and Robert Kraft have done an incredible job. Mm-hmm. As opposed to other franchises, the Redskins are a train wreck. They're still paying guys that haven't played for like 5 years on the Redskins.
Here's something.
The Cowboys have had the same problem.
Here's something crazy though. So the NFL average for available cap is a little over 11 million, right? The Patriots have about 6 million available. The Browns,
how much?
A little over 6 million. So they're about half what the league average is available. The Browns, evidently, I don't know, it seems like they have their whole salary cap available. They have almost 53.8 million in cap availability right now. The Colts, and they've 49.7.
By the way, and they've got John Dorsey as their GM. Listen, don't sleep on the Browns. I mean, that team is poised to be really, really good. I mean, they're actually pretty good right now. I mean, what were they? What did they start out? 1-4, or 1-3-1, and they're 5-7-1 now. I mean, that's a team that it's because of what you mentioned. They've got salary cap and they've got draft picks.
And they've got some talent on the team.
That's a team. And they've got a good team right now. I mean, I'm not sure they jettisoned Greg Williams. I think they might keep him. I don't know. We'll see. But they might keep Greg Williams and bring in a good offensive coordinator. See what they can do. I'm not sure they get rid of Greg Williams.
I think the two teams that are the most interesting, though, that are above the league average in available cap space are the Pittsburgh Steelers, $19.8 million, which clearly they had enough money to pay that $18 million. By the way, from what I understand, is there was an offer that was on the table I mean, you can't say that Le'Veon Bell didn't get a fair contract offer.
No,
but
he did.
He did, but the thing is, his offer, the guaranteed money, was less than what he would have got. The 4-year, was a 3 or 4 year deal. The average, if you take the average of guaranteed money, he was better off just being franchise tagged 3 or 4 years in a row. He would have got more money just by being franchise tagged.
Man.
So that's why he turned it down. That's why he turned it down.
Well, Kirk Cousins did it in Washington. He took the franchise tag 2 years in a row. He made $28 million in Washington.
Well, what Le'Veon Bell wanted, he wanted to get guaranteed money that was franchise tag value or higher, and a contract that was 4 years or more, 4 or 5 years, because he wanted to be able to have some sort of longevity for him as far as that deal. But that's the thing is like that's what.
Nobody's going to give him that.
But that's the thing is if why really they just what the Steelers did was they said, hey, we're going to shortchange you a couple $1 million here, which really isn't relevant to them. We're going to shortchange you a couple million in guaranteed money, and he held out, and then they lose that, and you can see the difference in the success of the team. You can't say that
they both lost. Listen, this was a lose-lose, right? Both
absolutely
lost in this deal, right? Le'Veon Bell gave up $14 million and probably another franchise tag next year, which would have been another, whatever. And the Steelers might not make the playoffs because they have a tough schedule. I mean,
they have the Patriots this week.
Have some tough games. Yeah. And then the Saints. I mean, the Steelers might not win another game. I mean,
they'll probably beat the Bengals.
They don't win another game.
They'll probably beat the Bengals.
Let's give them the Bengals.
Even though earlier in the year they did struggle and only beat the Bengals by a touchdown, but they'll probably beat the Bengals. Not because the Bengals are that good. It's because the Bengals find a way to lose a lot of football games.
Well, it's because the Bengals will have their lockers cleaned out. They'll have their golf clubs polished up. They'll be ready to go, right? I mean,
right.
You're like, okay, we're done. Let's go to Pittsburgh. But and Pittsburgh will have to win that game. But if they go 1-2, they'll be 8-7-1. I mean, they have to hope the Ravens lose 2 games.
Now, I got to say this. I can't go too fast on the Bengals, though. The Bengals do have Hugh Jackson back now. For whatever.
There you go. Yeah.
For whatever that's worth.
They're going to lose like 16 games in a row. Yeah. But the Ravens have the Buccaneers, Chargers, and Browns. And they play at the Chargers. So there's a good chance that the Ravens, and hell, think of this scenario. The Browns-Ravens are playing on Week 17 to win the division if the Browns win the next 2 weeks. That could happen. And you end up with Cleveland and Pittsburgh tied at 8-7-1. It could happen, right? Because Pittsburgh's got the Patriots and the Saints. I mean, you've got
Pittsburgh just lost to the Raiders.
Yes, they've lost to the Broncos, Chargers, and Raiders. Now, granted, 2 of those were in the West Coast, and they haven't lost by a bunch. I mean, their 3 losses are by a total of 13 points. Okay, they haven't gotten drilled, and they probably if
they should have lost to the Bucks
in Oakland. If the damn turf isn't so crappy in Oakland, they probably at least go into overtime. Now here's an idea I had. One of my crazy ideas. And the NFL is talking about the overtime rules, all that kind of crap. They keep tinkering with them. Why don't they go to the NHL? The NHL model is that if you get to overtime, the worst you get is a tie. The team that wins in overtime gets a win. Because the NHL grappled with this whole overtime deal as well. And they've gone to a model where overtime's a 5-minute 4-on-4. If you watch any hockey, which we'll talk about hockey much on this program, but and then
for good reason.
And, the winner, yes, for a good reason. Except my Capitals did win the Stanley Cup last year. I got to get that in.
I was there for the parade, by the way.
But
just so you know.
I know you were.
Yep.
But my point is that we talk about the overtime rules and how tinkering with those. I don't think it would make as big a difference if they went to the NHL model that says, look, if you get to overtime, you get no worse than a tie. And if you lose in overtime, the other team gets the win, but you still get a tie. I think that makes a lot of sense for the NFL right now, especially we're talking about.
Kevin, I don't know if that made sense with you saying it.
What, because I don't make sense? I just don't make any sense? Is that what you're saying?
No, that didn't. Maybe this is why I don't watch hockey.
But I think, no, but forget the hockey. It's just a hockey reference.
So, okay, so you go into overtime, and the team that wins in overtime gets a win, but the team that loses gets a tie?
Gets a win, gets a tie.
But they lost.
In other words, no, they didn't lose. In regulation, they tied.
But that's the whole point of overtime.
All you're playing for in overtime
is a win, right?
All you're playing for in overtime is yeah, but it gives you. My point is, they could then play with the overtime rules even more than they are now. They've already shortened it to 10 minutes. Right? They keep saying, well, okay, so how much different is that than saying, well,
so
if
who
you
wins?
A field goal, you
so who
win.
wins the Steelers-Browns game at the beginning of the season? Does that game still start out a tie?
Hear me out. Yeah, hear me out.
Okay.
How much different is my solution than this arbitrary? Well, if you kick a field goal on your first possession, you don't win. You have to get a touchdown, and if the second guy kicks a field goal, then you go into sudden death. But if they score a touchdown, that they win. It's all incredibly arbitrary. I mean, it's asinine. I mean, it's either overtime or it's not overtime. It's either sudden death or it's not. So if I kick a field goal,
might as well have college football.
Yeah, I think college football rules got it. It's much better.
Or use my model. But the college football rule is insane too, because kickers in the NFL can kick from 60 yards. But the point being, at least my solution makes the rest of it a little bit less of a big deal. So keep the same rules. To 10 minutes, the field goal not winning, the touchdown is winning, but at least the team that gets to overtime, you played 60 minutes of NFL football, which is incredibly hard to do. You at least get a tie out of it. I'm just saying, it's just it's no more bizarre and arbitrary than what they have today. And they're talking about player safety. They're talking about having to limit the amount of time players play. I'm just talking about it from the NFL's. And the NHL faced the same thing.
So you're saying that playing for a tie makes it safer?
Yeah. Not safer, but they can keep the same rule. They don't have to tinker with the rules anymore, because the overtime rules they have now, they're going to change. They are. They've changed them several times. It used to just be sudden death. The problem is you've got this stupid coin toss. Now, college football has solved that in that at least both teams get a possession. The NFL's been trying to. They've said, well, if you score a touchdown, then it's over. If you kick a field goal, then it's not over. How arbitrary is that? That makes no more sense than the college.
Well, they did that because they didn't want the kicker to decide the game. That's the only reason. Because they're still trying to cut down the amount of time that the players are on the field. So if you score a touchdown in overtime, they're like, "Oh, you scored a touchdown, you couldn't stop the touchdown, game is over." I don't think that's fair. The other team should get a shot.
It's stupid, right?
Yeah.
If you get
but if your kicker scores,
you're allowed to kick a field goal. You didn't stop me.
Yeah, that's not enough
from the field goal either. But that's not right. So it's all arbitrary. It's all like They're just making it up as they go along. My point is that getting to overtime in a tie is important. I mean, I think that it's just an idea that I had in one of my weird moments. I thought, well, just use the NHL model. And by the way, if you want to use the NHL model, then just kick field goal. Just do a field goal shootout. The loser gets a tie. The winner gets a win. There's no more extra time. Line up at the 40, kick a 47-yarder. It's like in soccer. Do the shootout. If you really want to limit the time that that the players are on the field, all that kind of stuff.
Could you imagine that
a
field
the tie?
Bring the kickers out and have a field goal contest?
Well, that's what they. That's essentially what they do in soccer, and it's essentially what they do in college football.
Well, the whole game is played.
I mean, you start at the 25-yard line.
I know, but I'm just
saying.
And
in college, hey, how arbitrary is this? In college, after the second overtime, you got to go for two. Who made that up? It's all arbitrary.
Hey,
it's not football.
Real men go
That's
for
not
two.
Football. Football is well, yeah, but they never do. Football says you decide to go for two if you want to go for two.
Tom Osborne went for two.
After two overtimes, you got to go for two. They changed the rules in overtime. I mean, come on, play football. So, my feeling is that I don't have a really good deal in the pros, but I think both teams should get a possession, no matter what.
That's
no matter what.
That's fair to say.
That's real. That's real football, right? Okay, so you score a touchdown. I got to go again and score a touchdown. Give them both a possession, and maybe that's. I mean, if you do that, just give them both one possession. See what you can do with the possession. If you don't get any score, then the game's over. You both get a tie. If you really want to limit the amount of time on the football field, because they're talking out of both sides of their mouth here, right? It's inconsistent messaging on what the NFL wants to happen. I'm just saying, the NHL, it's worked for them. They have a 5-minute overtime on 4-on-4, and then a shootout. And the reason they do it that way is because the team that loses at least gets a point. Now, the NHL has a different scoring system, right? You get a point for a tie and 2 points for a win, and it's the points that matter at the end of the season. But I just feel like the system they have now is inherently arbitrary, and it makes no sense to me. I go down the field, I kick a field goal, but that's not a win. But a touchdown would be a win. I mean, they're making it up. They can make up anything they want. Just make the rules how you want them. So stay with the same rules. I would change the rules. So you get to the end of the overtime, each team gets a tie. You give each team a possession. If they both score a field goal, it's a tie. If they both score a touchdown, it's a tie. If you score a touchdown, you score a field goal, you get a win. Be done. Call it over. We had ties in the NFL for 70 years. What's wrong with a tie? We still have ties.
Well,
they didn't do away with ties. Right? They didn't do away with ties. They just extended the time that it took to get to a tie.
Yeah. Did you know?
Right?
So, did you know today actually marks the 80 years ago today, the NFL played its championship game. It was the New York Giants and the Green Bay Packers. 80 years ago today. They played at a polo field in New York. Yeah, in 1938.
Yeah, Polo Grounds.
The Super Bowl is now a full 2 months later.
Yes. Yeah. Of course, they only played. They played 12 games or 10 games back then. I can't remember how many games they played back then.
Well, it took 2 months longer to get. It takes 2 months longer, so to figure out who's going to play.
Well, and look at when the first Super Bowl was played. The first Super Bowl, I think, was January 8th.
Were you there?
Of 1966. I watched it. It was on 2 channels.
I knew it. But you only had 4 channels, so.
Yeah, and it was on 2 of them. Because
and the president was on the other.
And the NFL was on CBS. But they both showed it. I think I watched it. I'm pretty sure I watched it on CBS. Although, and God, am I showing my age, man? The NBC broadcast crew was. You can fact check me on this, Matthew, and you probably will.
90 seconds.
Gowdy, and I believe the CBS broadcast play-by-play guy was, oh God, he did the Notre Dame games, and Lindsay, what was his name? Lindsay Nelson, I think. Was the CBS guy.
Why do you know this?
You can fact check me. Because
60 seconds.
Because I paid attention all the.
You know what this reminds me of? ESPN about 15 years ago was really smart because as they were building their brand, it's like who wants to become the next Sports Center host? And they actually used to have like this reality show, game show that people would come on and have to answer these trivia questions, like Jeopardy questions for sports. Like shit, no one should know, like off the top of their head, like who was the announcer for the first Super Bowl that they watched when they were, I'm assuming you were probably 25 at that point. I know, I'm just kidding. Why? Why would somebody know that? Like
10 seconds.
If your name's not Sheldon Cooper, why would you remember stuff like that?
Yeah, Lindsay Nielsen. Here we go. So CBS, I was right. It was Kurt Gowdy, but CBS was Ray Scott. Dang it, I missed that. Ray Scott, Jack Whitaker, and Frank Effort. But NBC was Kurt Gowdy.
Ray Scott is offended.
And here's
just
the
so
deal.
You know.
The CBS had a 22.6 rating, and NBC had an 18.5 rating. And so CBS outdrew NBC on the broadcast. But I remember that game. Yeah, I think I might have even switched back and forth. So it was January 15th, 1967. I was 8 years old. And it wasn't much of a game because the Packers were so much better. But that was the next to last appearance for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. They won it 4 years later, and that's the last time they were in the Super Bowl for the Chiefs. So big deal for the Chiefs this year. But no, I know that. I just know this stuff. It's my mother used to tell me. I was just full of worthless information.
Didn't Dan Snyder's father own the team then, though?
What, the Chiefs? No, the Chiefs were owned at the time.
I was thinking of the Redskins. Never mind. Yeah, the Redskins. Because Dan Snyder's dad owned a team before him, I believe.
The Redskins were owned prior to Dan Snyder by Jack Kent Cook. And then it was owned by the Jack Kent Cook's estate, and then Snyder bought it from the estate after Jack Kent Cook's death. That first Super Bowl was pretty cool. It was because I was a big AFL fan at the time. I watched a lot of football even when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. So I watched AFL and NFL, and the AFL at the time was very entertaining because it the San Diego Chargers with John Hadel.
Well, actually, it was the L.A. Chargers. It was the L.A. Chargers. Then they moved to San Diego after a year or two.
Then they moved to but at the time of that first Super Bowl, they'd already moved to San Diego.
Yeah,
but
they were only in Los Angeles for a couple of years.
And the Kansas City Chiefs actually started out as the Dallas Texans, and then moved to Kansas City. Lamar Hunt moved the team to Kansas City, and then the Dallas Cowboys started in 1960 or 61 in Dallas. And so you had the Raiders. And
do you think they look back, like in hindsight, and be like, "Wow, that was a bad move"? Like, do you think that? What do you think was a worse move? The Cowboys getting rid of Eric Dickerson, or the Chiefs moving to Kansas City, leaving Dallas to go to Kansas City? What was the worst exit from Dallas?
Did Dallas have Eric Dickerson? You're talking about the Herschel Walker trade.
Herschel Walker, my bad. Herschel Walker.
Yeah, you mean the Vikings giving up everything for Herschel Walker?
Because, well, he left Dallas. That's what I'm saying. He left Dallas
because the Herschel Walker trade set up the entire 90s.
Yeah, I get that.
Dallas Cowboys. I mean,
yeah, but they didn't revel in that for 3 or 4 years. They missed Herschel Walker immediately.
It took like 3 years. Yeah, but that trade resulted in them being able to draft Michael Irvin and Emmitt Smith and Troy Aikman, and
so clearly the Chiefs were the worst exit.
Yeah, they wouldn't have been able to get to those Super Bowls if they didn't make that move.
That's right. I mean, that's actually the only decent move Jerry Jones has ever made.
But that wasn't Jerry. That wasn't Jerry that did that.
No, that was Jerry.
No, that was Jimmy Johnson.
Jerry. That was Jerry Jones. Well, but Jerry Jones had bought the team.
Jerry Jones had bought the teams. Jimmy Johnson's the one that executed that stuff. All that stuff. That was all Jimmy Johnson.
Yes. Right. So basically, Jerry Jones, in terms of football moves, has never done squat. Right? I mean, he hasn't. Now, he's made some great business moves. Don't get me wrong. He did the Pepsi deal. He built the stadium. He's done some great things with marketing and all that kind of thing.
Man, he's the biggest reason that the Raiders are probably the biggest reason that the Raiders are going to Vegas. He's the whole one of the biggest reasons why Levi's Stadium is there for the 49ers. Like the guy is uberly influential in the NFL. Obviously,
no question.
He doesn't have all to say. He got his hand slapped at the beginning of the year. He got kind of punked by the league. They're like, yeah, you do a lot, bud, but slow your roll.
Don't get me wrong. From a business perspective, Jerry Jones is a genius. But on the football side, listen, if he had been able to keep Jimmy Johnson, they'd have won. They'd be the Patriots. They'd have won 10 Super Bowls. I'm convinced of it.
And maybe another
7.
Maybe up
3 or 4. 7. Yeah, 3 or 4 maybe. Okay. Because Jimmy Johnson was, he was only there for a nanosecond. He didn't even win the third one. Barry Switzer won the third one.
Right.
Johnson was already gone. He was already gone. So, if Jimmy Johnson had stayed, who knows what they could have done? Because you're right, he was the football brains. Jerry Jones is the business brains. Hell, they've only won one playoff game since Emmitt Smith Michael Irvin and Troy Aikman retired. They've won one freaking playoff game.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. And they had Tony Romo and Des Bryant and Sean Lee. And look who they've had. They've won one playoff game. Come on. Is that underperforming or what? I mean, it really is. But Jerry doesn't mind. He's making billions of his franchises. He bought that franchise for like $400,000. It's worth $4 billion.
Yeah.
Excuse me, $400 million. $400 million.
I was going to say 400,000. I missed out on it.
Yeah,
sorry.
Wait.
I remember when I was a kid, I started saving because I wanted to buy the San Francisco 49ers. I clearly gave up on that very early and spent the money on some other shit. But nonetheless, I at one point in time had aspirations of owning an NFL franchise. I no longer do. Unless they come into some sort of like Mark Cuban sort of money.
The price has gone up exponentially.
Yeah, that's fair to say.
What was the big lottery jackpot recently? 1.6 billion?
Something like that.
You couldn't even snip a franchise for that. You couldn't even snip a franchise for that now.
Well, it's because they take half of it in taxes.
If you walk away with the $638 million, you'd be a minority partner, right? You could maybe get in the game, get a box or something, but you couldn't own the franchise.
And you wouldn't even.
It's ridiculous.
You wouldn't even touch Magic Johnson.
Yeah, what are the Dodgers? I mean, what do they pay for the Dodgers? They paid like what, $2.3 billion for the Dodgers?
Yeah.
I mean, they so overpaid for that franchise, but the thing is about that purchase is, they were looking at the long term, and the media market in Los Angeles for the Dodgers is ridiculous. We don't really think about that on the East Coast. Now, James, where do you live? Are you in Washington, or are you in South Florida?
No, I'm in the Washington area.
You're in Washington. I mean, that's a big media market, but it's nothing like L.A. because it's similar because people spend a lot of time in their cars in Washington, but they spend twice the amount of time in their cars in L.A. And so,
they don't really have they don't really have like the rail system like in LA like they do in DC. Even though there's like a good number of trains,
right.
But even with that, like LA is so big, and then like every surrounding area is part of LA. Like Anaheim, part of LA.
Yeah, it's huge, and they're in their cars. Yeah, you guys are on the Metro. And I'm from Virginia, and I've spent a lot of time in D.C. But in L.A., they're in their cars, and that media market is ridiculous. And so, and the Dodgers own it, and now they really own it with their two World Series appearances. But it's interesting how they can. Translate that into revenue, and that's what some of these ownership groups are good at doing. Jerry Jones is great at it. The Dodgers are great at it. Some franchise. Well, hell, the Yankees. They got the Yes Network. They got a whole network around the Yankees. Right? I mean, you got the whole deal. So, Matthew, you and I talk a lot about the business side of sports. And so, they've just made these things, business engines, and that's what Jerry Jones has done with the Cowboys. They suck on the field, but to him, I mean, his bottom line has nothing to do with on the field success. Now, other franchises, you got the smaller market teams. I'm going to put Denver even in that area. The Broncos, because they're isolated. The Oklahoma City Thunder, that kind of thing. But you get these big market teams. It's a whole different business model. The Nationals haven't seemed to be able to break that, but the Nationals, they're pretty popular on television up there, James, and they're in the Bryce Harper sweepstakes, but I'm not sure they can compete there. I mean, we'll see. Apparently, the Yankees are not in the market for Bryce Harper, from what I understand today.
Looks like they're not in the market. But I mean, I heard that the Phillies were like an outside shot to be in the market for Bryce Harper. But they're out. Andrew McCutcheon, so I don't think they're gonna invest on trying to get Bryce Harper now since they got McCutcheon.
I got to say, that's a great move because McCutcheon, from a production standpoint, is better than Bryce Harper, but from a fan appeal and all that kind of standpoint. Listen, I came through Pittsburgh 2 years ago, year and a half ago, and my whole family's from Pittsburgh. I just happened to be going through on a night when the Pirates were playing the Nationals, and I got to see Steven Strasburg pitch for the Nationals, and I got to see Bryce Harper hit a home run. And I got to tell you, Harper is electric. I mean, from an in the park fan perspective, when he comes to the plate, it's ridiculous. And I've also seen Mike Trout play. I saw Mike Trout play in the minor leagues here in Arkansas, and he's great too. But he plays for a team that can't make the playoffs. Unfortunately, nobody gets to see him. He plays in the West Coast. Who's going to stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning to watch, Mike Trout? But Harper. But if the Phillies are out and the Yankees are out, and I think the Dodgers might be in play, but Scott Boras, his agent, can't be happy today because his value's dropping. Because if the Yankees are out, there's only three other teams that can really compete because the Phillies had tons of space. You've only got the Cubs and the Dodgers left. And I don't think the Cubs want them because they've got their guys.
I don't think the Cubs want them. The thing with the Dodgers is they still got to deal with Manny Machado, right?
I know. But, so you got Machado. So all of a sudden you're thinking, we were thinking, well, Bryce Harper's going to get a 10-year, $400 million deal or something like that, right? That was the deal. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't see that happening. Who's going to pay that? I mean, people are looking at the Pujols deal, right, and going, that didn't work out real well. That's not a great deal. Harper's not getting Pujols, and Harper's not as good as Pujols. Pujols was a four-talent guy.
Right.
Harper just hits home runs. He's okay in the field. But, we'll see. I mean, I think the Nationals still have a shot at Harper, James, given that what's transpired, because they had a really good deal on the table for him.
Yeah, they did.
Didn't they offer him? Did they offer him five? Did they offer him 5 years? 5 years, $200 million. Was it 5 years, $200 million that the Nationals offered Bryce Harper? Was it something like that?
Yeah, I'm not certain.
6 years, 180 or something like that. I mean, that might be the best deal he gets. So we'll see. That'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Because I think, let's see, what's the deadline for that? January 15th? something like that. I don't follow baseball that closely, but they've got another 3-4 weeks to work that out. But everybody just assumed that he was going to the Phillies or the Yankees, and they're both out now. The Phillies can't afford him. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Harper and where he's going to end up at.
Hey Matthew, we've had a bunch of sports tonight. You want to try lacrosse or women's soccer or I don't know.
I will. I mean, James is still on here, and we will definitely get into boxing.
Rugby maybe. Yeah, let's go to boxing. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, we got about a few minutes left.
Yeah, we do. We're already in overtime as far as Blog Talk Radio goes, but we do have about 5 minutes left, actually, on the show. I did want to talk about briefly the fight that happened this weekend between Vasily Lomachenko, who depends on where you look, is one of the top 2 pound-for-pound fighters in the world, against Luis Pedraza. I wasn't able to live score that game. What's that? Jose Pedraza. My bad, Jose. I wasn't able to live score that fight. I did go back over and I started taking care of some of it. As far as my scorecard went, the first 3 rounds, I mean, I had Pedraza winning those first 3 rounds on the scorecard. So that's something a bit more than anybody else has done against Lomachenko. But as pretty much every fight he's ever been in, and the way you see most of the prize fighters end up, the veterans end up around the 5th or 6th round, they make an adjustment, they flip a switch, and the fight looks completely different. And for the 4 fights, not before this, he had 4 fights in a row, or essentially in the 5th or 6th round, that the fighters gave up, and he earned the nickname No Moschenko because he had guys thrown in the towel. And I mean, they're literally saying we gave up because we couldn't see him, we couldn't hit him. If you can't see him, you can't hit him, then what are you going to do? And then why are we there? So they said, we're leaving. Bye. They took their ball and left. With Pedraza, who was a bigger fighter, and this was more of a even though it was at lightweight, he's more of a super lightweight fighter, 140-pound fighter rather than 135. And I think for Lomachenko, 140 may be the max he can go just because of his frame, but came close to a stoppage on this fight. I believe it was the 10th round. He scored a couple knockdowns or the 11th round, he scored a couple knockdowns against Pedraza, but wasn't able to finish him out. Ended up winning by unanimous decision, and captured the WBA belt. He already had the WBO, and captured the WBL, so he unified 2 of the belts in this fight. What did you think of the fight, James?
I mean, mainly I saw it as a fight to see where Lomachenko was at ever since his win over Jorge Linares, where he won the WBA version of the title, and see where Pedraza was. I mean, a lot of people were highly favoring Lomachenko to defeat Pedraza, pretty much in spectacular fashion or something like that. But Pedraza was, very active in this particular fight. He was, still game, from round one for most of the fight. I would say from round 1 to round 12, with the exception of the 11th round, where while Lomachenko kind of like picked up his overall activity in that particular round, and Pedraza couldn't do anything to keep Lomachenko off of him. So other than that, I just kind of like saw it as a a little bit below expectations for Vasyl Lomachenko in this particular fight. But I mean, he was able to get the win, won the majority of the rounds, and just unifies those lightweight titles. But now in the overall aspect of the lightweight division, there really isn't that much left for Vasyl Lomachenko, since Mikey Garcia is moving up to welterweight to fight Errol Spence Jr. I just say it's like up in the air as far as what his next move is going to be in the lightweight division.
I thought Lomachenko just landed more punches. I mean, it just came down to that, James. Pedraza fought a good fight, but Lomachenko just, landed more punches.
It was a lot more active, of course.
I think it just came down to that.
Yeah, I just felt that Lomachenko would have done a lot better as far as like his overall movement was concerned. I didn't see him really move as much as he did in his previous fights.
Yeah, he was pretty stagnant.
I don't know, maybe it's a sign of him, moving up a little bit too high. I did say that after his last fight that this being at lightweight could be his overall limit as far as like how high up he could go, because he still has to round out his frame, and he had been an amateur for a good amount of time. So him being a pro is not he doesn't really have that long as a pro in comparison to his amateur career. So
I mean, he fought for a title in his second professional fight.
Right, but the thing is that he had almost 400 amateur fights.
Yeah.
400.
One loss.
So,
that's a lot.
Very extensive amateur career, to say the least.
Now, with Top Rank was hoping by this point that that the guy that they would see across from him and they'd be able to make money on fighting against him at this lightweight, in this lightweight division, was Felix Verdejo. Where do you see him? Do you see him being able to rebound? Because the thought was because he was supposed to fight in the UK, and that fight got called off from injury. The UK boxer said it was from injury. Do you see Felix Verdejo getting an opportunity again to really compete?
Yeah, that may be an outside shot for Verdejo to get back into it. But they had in the undercard, Teofimo Lopez, who got a first round knockout, and Teofimo Lopez has been one that has called out Lomachenko there at lightweight. So that could be a possibility as a future fight for Lomachenko in the lightweight division. And it looks like right now they're kind of, promoting Lopez as that, next guy up when, Verdejo at a time was supposed to be that guy, coming from Puerto Rico and having a little following before, when it ended up happening to him, and then him losing by, TKO. So, watch out for Teofimo Lopez.
And what we seen a couple weeks ago with Wilder and Tyson Fury was probably one of the funner heavyweight fights to watch in recent memory. I scored that, as I said last week. I scored that fight 9 rounds out of 12 for Tyson Fury. Wilder did score.
They've already got the rematch.
Well, they're saying that they're agreeing to a rematch. They haven't set a date for the rematch. And Eddie Hearns, a matchmaker, he's trying to undermine that to try to get a fight in April between Wilder and Anthony Joshua, which I don't think is going to happen. But he's trying to undermine it.
He doesn't want to sign. He don't have the courage to sign for that fight.
Yeah,
he never did.
I think, but the thing is, the funny thing is, Eddie Hearns was saying, Wilder's a bum. We're not going to take that fight. He needs to wait in line. He'll get his turn whenever we feel it is. Fight this guy in the meantime. But then when he sees, he essentially lost. He lost that fight. I mean, if you watch the fight, Tyson Fury. And I'll use the words of another boxer, Jamal Herring, he put on a boxing clinic. He outboxed him most of the fight. He was knocked down twice, yes. But he won 9 of the 12 rounds. And that thing is, if you want to go see what the fight card was, the actual scorecard for the fight, I got it over on Instagram. Again, I've been an apologist, if you want to say that, for ringside referees. I don't see at any point, the same way I couldn't really see at any point during the Pacquiao-Horn fight, how you score this fight a draw or in favor of anyone other than Fury or Pacquiao in those 2 fights. I don't see how. Even the Canelo, I had Canelo winning the first fight on points. Even then, I could say, whatever. I could kind of find the draw in that. But like I said, if the trilogy had to work, and I said that before the first fight, the first fighter to actually win a fight has to be Canelo for it to go forwards because of the myth. And you got to draw, which worked best. I said Canelo has to win fight 2. Because if Canelo doesn't win fight 2, fight 3 doesn't make as much sense because Canelo already has a loss and Triple G didn't. So if Triple G comes into that fight with a loss and a draw against Canelo, the third fight makes more sense. And obviously there's a little bit of hesitation. There's not as much traction on that fight happening as quick because Canelo's now taking his mandatory fights in between, which he fights. Was it this weekend? When is that Canelo fight?
Yeah, it's this weekend, and it's actually at super middleweight against Rocky Fielding. That's for like a regular title at super middleweight. So he's having this fight here at Madison Square Garden for super middleweight title, and then after that, we'll see what happens as far as like him, going back down to middleweight and defending the titles that he has there, or having some type of fight at super middleweight, which I doubt.
But James, is in a bigger picture perspective, and UFC is just taken over boxing with the younger generation. I think one of the reasons is we know who wins. There's no damn judges. You brought up the the fight with Horn. I mean, I was actually getting back into boxing, and that was a travesty. I mean, anybody that watches that fight knew who won the fight, and it went the other way. And I went, screw this, I'm not going to watch this anymore. And so boxing has lost credibility with anybody that watches the fight, because you go, oh, I'm going to invest, an hour or 3 hours or whatever in this endeavor with the count the undercards, and then it's screwed. It's rigged. It in my perception, they rig it for the next bout, and that's not a sport. I mean, listen, we're arguing over overtime rules so they can win, and they do that kind of crap. I mean, come on. I mean, that undermines the sport, which is why I think boxing, unfortunately, has lost popularity. I love the sport. I love watching it, but I'm not going to watch something where one guy clearly wins and the judges, because they can, or because they're forced to, or because they're incented to, go a different direction. That makes no sense to me. That's not a sport. That's a spectacle. It's an exhibition. So, to me, they've undermined their own success. Now, yeah, you'll get those random big giant pay-per-view events, but it for the most part, and I know that ESPN and now they're trying to bring some of this boxing back into the mainstream. I'd love to watch it, but to me, if you're putting the hands in three judges who obviously have different incentives and they don't see it, it makes no sense to me. And so I just put that on to you, James, is what your comment on that is, because I have a hard time buying into the sport as a whole when you have these weird results, when anybody with two eyes can watch and they know who wins the fight.
Well, the thing about it is that, even with that, you've had a lot of money be recently invested into the sport of boxing. There have been a couple of, network deals with, Fox and Showtime, and also the whole thing with DAZN,
ESPN.
Which is, like a streaming channel. And
yeah,
yes, you also
was that
have ESPN
DAZN?
now, who's going to, they're going to have, more fighters pretty much shown on their programs. The thing with Canelo Alvarez is that he has like a $365 million deal to be provided on one network. So, I mean, the money's still out there for these fighters. The interest is still out there for these fights to, happen. So, I'm not necessarily, writing off boxing as a whole yet. It's just that right now, I think the whole landscape of boxing is changing, because the whole pay-per-view model, as you mentioned, is actually on its way out. This past weekend, we had, the last telecast of HBO boxing after 45 years. It's been, almost 50 years that HBO has televised boxing on their network. But that's not going to happen. And, everything is transitioning over to the ESPNs, the Showtimes, the Fox networks and things like that. So I think that's, where things are kind of like changing. And also with DAZN, they're kind of like having the same model as, how the WWE network came out in, just on-demand content for the sport. Actually, we were talking about this thing with Vasyl Lomachenko. They just put on the ESPN here that he's going to return to the ring on April 12th. So we're going to see Vasyl Lomachenko. That's going to be his next planned fight.
And as far as the sport of boxing, there is far and wide more money in boxing than there is in MMA. That's why you have Dana White, the president of UFC, looking for more ways to get into boxing. He wants to he's going to start promoting boxing events. which he did one just not too long ago, did he not? His first boxing event.
I think that's outstanding. I love boxing, and I'm not an MMA fan. I mean, I like boxing.
See, that's the thing is, I think the problem right now, the problem with boxing right now, the biggest problem is exposure. People have no idea who they are. It's action. It's people fighting each other. You know, there's some people that will watch sports, be it auto racing for the crashes, hockey for the fighting, NFL for the collisions, baseball for the home runs, NBA for the dunks. The physical parts of these sports. The high impact parts, and boxing is a high impact sport. So it's there to watch. It's there to be had, but boxing has been so fragmented, and I'm happy that they're doing this, like you said, a version kind of like the WWE, because I said my thing over the past 5 years is what boxing needs is that boxing network. I was talking about last year, around this time of year last year, is if you take, there's essentially like 5 main promoting companies. There's like 5 guys that really promote everybody. If these 5 guys, at least 3 of the 5 guys, get together and say, we're going to put all of our fights, no matter what, on this one network, and it's $8.99 a month, people will pay for that. And everything's there. And that way, since you have everybody's attention focused on one place, you can now promote the fighters more and promote brands more and move off of that. See, that's what the WWE has done well. They've captivated their audience. They can. Right. The crazy thing about WWE is people are different people. Like Triple H wasn't always Triple H. He's been about 4 different people. And it's funny because they run guys out and the character doesn't hit right, and they wait and they run the same son of a bitch out in a different outfit and call him something else, and people are like, oh, I love it. And it's like, It's the same guy.
But Matthew and James, boxing also needs a single organization. Like, okay.
Well,
it'd be like in Major League Baseball if you had like 6 leagues and they never played each other, and you said, well, is Cleveland wins the Midwest Baseball League, and the Yankees win the Eastern Baseball League, and the Dodgers win the Western Baseball League, and now we're going to have a consolidation tournament. Where,
they do that,
but Cleveland doesn't play Los Angeles. Cleveland plays San Diego because San Diego has a better promoter, so they get to play Cleveland, and LA.
Well, that's how college football was before the BCS.
Boston, right? Exactly. Boston gets to play Los Angeles, but Boston isn't really the best team in the Eastern Baseball League, but their promoter is better, so they get to play. And you go, but who the hell is who, and who's really good? So this fragmented kind of WBO, WBA, WB, whatever the hell, IBO, IBA.
If you just simply look at it,
let me finish.
Yeah.
So to a fan that's trying to get into the sport, right? That's trying to engage in the sport, it makes no freaking sense. So you go, I'm tuning out, and I'm definitely not paying $99.99 for a fight that I don't even know what the hell has happened. And this goes all the way back to the '90s when you had that insane decision with Whitaker and whoever there was an Chavez. Yes, the non-unanimous decision. Even though Whitaker beat him on 2 of the 3 cards, you went, oh oh, then it's a tie. I mean, what the hell is that? So the whole sport, I mean, listen, I love the fact that they're getting more exposure, but you got to organize the sport better.
I agree.
It goes to organization.
If you looked at the WBO, WBC, WBA, IBF, IBO, if you're looking at these divisions,
whatever.
If you look at these, they're organizations. But if you looked at them like divisions, like the NFC North, the NFC South, the NFC East, the NFC West, if you look at them as divisions within a certain, then it makes more sense. But it doesn't, because you have weight classes. And because it's not just the WBO heavyweight champion, it's the WBO heavyweight champion, WBO, the silver heavyweight champion, the intercontinental heavyweight champion, the interim heavyweight champion. How can you have 6 dudes at the same time be the WBO champion? You can't. That's not a championship. That's just, people getting participation. It seems like participation medals. That's where they're starting to lose people. So they do need to consolidate the belts.
When they have all those belts and the organizations get all that money when they're supposed to be just, one champion.
Exactly. So if we could figure out how to do, and even if they wanted to do, like, if they said that there's a number 1 contender belt, even if, like, an intercontinental champion. I mean, that's the thing is, like, there's ways to organize the belts. So, you know who the champion is of that particular belt. And you want to see champions fight champions. And you want to see the champion fight the number 1 contender. What you don't want to see is the guy that has the WBC championship not fight anybody in the top 10 until his 41st fight.
Right.
And
it's
then
like,
get outboxed by the guy and call it a draw. That's what you don't want to see.
And he's beaten 17 guys he's met at the bar. I mean, it's like, come on.
Exactly.
That's essentially the beginning of Wilder's career. He had bar fights for his first 20-some fights, and then.
But if you go back,
like
sanctioned bar fights.
A fake butter bean in like his 20th fight or something.
Yeah, but I'll go. I'm an old guy, so I'm going back to Ali Frazier. I'm going back to Sugar Ray Robinson and Michael Hearn. Right? I mean, there was no doubt. There was no doubt who was the best in that. I mean, they were fighting for something. They were fighting for the top spot, right? Now, I love the weight classes, but the fact is that when Sugar Ray Robinson fought Thomas Hearn, that was a big deal because you knew that Sugar Ray Leonard. When Sugar Ray Leonard fought Thomas Hearn, that was a big deal. Because that was it. There weren't 27 other people out there. That was it. Hagler against Hearn, Hagler against Leonard, right? Or Muhammad Ali against Frazier, Ali against Foreman, Foreman against Frazier. I mean, they were that was like the Broncos. That was like the Patriots playing the Steelers. That was like you knew who they were doing, what it was. What it was for, what it was about. Today, it's like, what the hell? What's this all about? And the fact that Merriweather didn't fight what's his name for 20 years. What the hell was that about?
Pacquiao, 5 years. Yeah.
Pacquiao, Mayweather, Pacquiao didn't happen for what the heck? That's ridiculous. That does nothing for the sport. And I'm a sports guy. So if you're not engaging me, how the hell can you engage people that you need to engage to energize the sport? I mean, Pacquiao and Mayweather didn't fight till they were both too old to actually fight. I mean, Mayweather did he throw a punch? He just ran around the ring and won the fight. I mean, that was ridiculous. And we knew that was what it was going to be like. But and he still made a fortune.
Yeah.
That doesn't, but that doesn't grow the sport of boxing, which is why MMA is so popular. There's pretty
but
much
that's the thing is, like, if you think of the UFC, the UFC brands the UFC. They really don't brand the fighters, and a lot of the fighters are starting to get upset because of it. And that's what's really dragging it down. But with the UFC for the fans, there's rarely a time where you don't see two of the best guys fight each other. Because Dana White will make sure that it happens because he knows people are going to buy it. Hey, James, we only have a couple minutes left here. I want to ask you a question real quick. Dylan White, is he the WBO champion now? Because him and Joseph Parker fought for a vacant.
That's a whole little thing about number one contenders and things like that.
They fought for the vacant belt.
The number one contender. He's the number one contender for the WBC championship, but Deontay Wilder doesn't want to fight him. So he keeps fighting those voluntaries and whatever it is. And so with Dylan White, he has like a fight coming up December 22nd. And if he wins that fight, then he'll go up against, most likely go up against Anthony Joshua in April, for the Unified Heavyweight Championships.
But he's a WBO champion, right?
Anthony Joshua is a WBO champion.
Well, because in that fight against Joseph Parker back in July, they fought for the vacant WBO international heavyweight title. So that just made him a number one contender?
Yeah, basically.
There's your case in point, Kevin.
See? There you go.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, and you follow the sport and you're still confused. I mean, it's like...
That's why I'm not a boxing editor.
Give me a bracket, okay? Give me a bracket. Give me a...
they couldn't even... No, they... one organization tried that, and they couldn't even pull that off. I'm telling you, hey, 2 years ago, they tried it. They were supposed to have Klitschko and Fury being a rematch, and then the winner was supposed to fight somebody, and then there was supposed to be another bracket on the other side. And they were supposed to fight somebody, and only one fight actually happened in 2016 of that bracket. That's it.
And then they had a TV. What's the TV show? The Contender?
But that's because the guys in charge are the promoters, as opposed to the sport itself. There is no organization, right? It's the promoters that put the fights together. It was this was let me go back 110 years. It's how the NFL got started. It used to be before the NFL, they had teams. They had football teams, and they would play each other, and they would just arrange games. That's how it started. That's how it was. Back, you got these guys that they put together teams, and they arrange games, and they would sell tickets. Well, that's how boxing is, right? Right? There is no league. There is no. And then George Halas, and then some of the early guys that started the NFL said, "Wait a second, we need to put a league together so we can have some more organization and formality to this," and that's what happened. But football started the same way. Football was like that. They just kind of, when Red Grange played, for instance, he was not in the NFL. Red Grange played before the NFL, and they just used to go out and play games, right? And then he was really popular, and then they decided.
Like in boxing, they do have like some type of tournaments. They had like this thing called the World Boxing Super Series. They had that tournament, that ended, earlier this year, and then They tried to start up another one of those World Boxing Super Series, and now, hey, guess what? They might not even be able to continue that World Boxing Super Series because they don't have enough money. It's just, boxing just has way too many people involved in it to really have like a organized one division, one champion for each of the divisions and all of that. So kind of like
they needed Dana White, but they needed Dana White, right? Matt, I mean, they need a guy that can come in and infuse money and say, I am going to organize this. And maybe Dana White's the guy because he has the money now. And so I'd love to see it. I would love to see it. I would, if somebody would sit down and tell me the quarterfinals for the World Boxing welterweight is tonight, and we're going to see 4 fights, and the 4 winners meet in 3 months for the semifinals, and the final are in July for every division. We have a big weekend where every division has their champion. I would watch every friggin' fight. I would watch every division. I'd watch every fight. But because I would know that they mean something, and I knew, this guy's going to meet that guy, and that guy's going to meet that guy, and that guy's going to meet that guy, I would watch it. I would probably pay for it. Not $100 a night, but I would pay for it.
They
right?
ain't having $600 a night. No, they're not doing that anymore. Like,
but I would pay for that.
Now where
I would
it's like WWE.
I would pay for
all you would do is
though.
pay like $10.
Yeah, if you told me on the boxing channel, we're going to have a boxing network champion, and we're going to start with 8 fighters in each division. What's it, 7 or 8 divisions, and we're going to go bracket it out, and the tournament starts in January, and what do they do? The 3 months between fights. That by on New Year's Eve, not competing with football, but on New Year's Eve, we're going to have 8 fights, each one of them resulting in a champion of that division for that year. I would pay for that. I'd watch it. I'd say, okay, what's going to cost me? $100 for the year? I'll take it. I'll pay for it because I get to see 80 fights. I'll take it because I know that this guy's. I mean, I've got a season of fights that result in a championship. But the way it is now, I don't know who wins what. I mean, the Lomachenko fight, that was a unification bout, but that's unusual these days, right? And that was only a unification of 2 bouts. I mean, there's 27, and it was a good fight.
2 fights ago, Terrence Crawford became he unified all the belts at 140, and then he moved up in weight classes.
Yeah. But I mean, but I'm just saying that boxing it's not promoted itself very well. Use a pun about the promotion, but they haven't done a good job, and it hasn't helped that boxing used to be shown at the Olympics. They used to show amateur boxing a lot. I haven't seen a boxing match at the Olympics, and they still have boxing, I think, but they might not. I don't know if they do or not at the Olympics. So guys like Michael Spinks and Leon Spinks and all those guys back in the 70s and 80s that when they fought in the Olympics, they used that amateur exposure to launch into professional boxing. We were interested in them. We watched them as individuals. We were attracted to them as athletes. We don't have that anymore. You don't have that it's like college football. You watch the college guys go to the pros. You don't have it anymore in boxing. It's like how do I get attracted to the individuals? So.
Makes sense. So just real quick on give people an update on who Terrence Crawford I just mentioned. He won his last fight, moving up to welterweight, 147. It looks like there's a good chance of his next fight being, sometime between March and May, fighting Amir Khan. The fight would likely be in the United States. Could either be in New York or Vegas. There's still a lot of details to work out. My source with on this side of it, on Crawford's side, says the deal's not done yet. There's a lot to be worked out. A UK source says that the Amir Khan side, he would be guaranteed $5 million in the fight. So, Amir Khan in this case, clearly not being a champion, beat the B-side fighter. He wouldn't have trouble traveling. He's a name. And what I think, as far as Terrence Crawford right now, is he needs to get his name out there. He needs to build his name up. He needs Kevin Kress to know who he is. So Kevin, you'll go watch him. He needs to get the average sports fan too, that may have been on the fence about boxing, maybe watch Mayweather fights. He needs to get them to want to watch him. But if he doesn't get his name out there, it won't matter. So, thank you all for who were listening over on Blog Talk Radio. I know the broadcast has concluded over on Blog Talk Radio. Thank you for all of you who have hung in there and have stayed on with us over on the Spreaker app as well as Facebook Live. We only have a few minutes left on the show tonight. But I just wanted to say this. I know a lot of people are saying that this fight is happening. It's happening. What I'm telling you is, it could very well happen sometime between March and May of 2019. Could be in New York. Could be in Los Angeles, from what my sources have said. But there are a lot of details that have to be worked out with this still. So, as soon as I find out more information on when that fight will go down, I will let you know. As James said earlier, Vasily Lomachenko will be fighting again in April. Who he fights, I don't know. Clearly, Vasily Lomachenko feels that Mikey Garcia should be his next opponent, because at lightweight, that's who has been who's been one of the superior guys at lightweight. However, he has moved up in weight. To fight in March against Errol Spence Jr. Mikey Garcia most recently fought and beat Robert Easter Jr. for the IBF and WBC lightweight titles. So he doesn't necessarily have to vacate those belts to move up in weight. But he would be moving up 2 weight classes. So from 135 pounds to go to 147 pounds to fight for the IBF title, which Errol Spence has. And that fight will be March 16th at AT&T Stadium. So at lightweight, the top 2 guys at lightweight are Vasily Lomachenko and Mikey Garcia. Jose Pedraza was ranked in the top 2-3 fighters in most weight classes, and Lomachenko just beat him this weekend. So at lightweight, it doesn't really look like there's too many other notable options at lightweight for him. So this is what I was saying. It's not. I don't think it's as likely for Vasily Lomachenko to go